Okay, thank you all for staying and rejoining us. We will continue in our next section, which is on culturally appropriate intervention and the education models. So our next speaker invites us to reflect on how interventions must fit families' cultural and daily realities. We are delighted to welcome Dotun Akande, an advanced certified autism specialist and the founder of Patrick's Speech and Language Center in Nigeria. Dotun's work is guided by a simple yet powerful question. Does this intervention truly fit the child and the family? She challenges the widespread assumption that effective interventions can simply be copied and transplanted across contexts. Instead, she emphasizes that meaningful support must be adapted, culturally responsive, and grounded in the lived realities of families. Language matters, culture matters, family routines, family beliefs, and expectations, they all matter. Dotun speaks to the risk of imposing models that do not align with family values or daily life. When interventions ignore context, families disengage, progress slows, and trust is lost. Her experiences shows that her experiences show that progress accelerates when families recognize themselves in the support they receive, that when they can relate with the support that they receive, when interventions feel respectful, relevant, and achievable. She emphasizes collaboration over prescription and partnership over compliance. This session invites professionals, educators, and policymakers to rethink how programs are designed and evaluated, reminding us that cultural intelligence is not optional. It is foundational to ethical and effective practice. Please welcome Dotun Akande. Dr. Akande, if you were on the call, please take the mic.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, where I am. I'm glad to
Thank
be
you
here.
for joining us.
Yes, thank you for the invite and thank you for bringing this to the fore. It's something that is very dear to my heart and something I have or advocated for over the years. So I'll be sharing my slides. I hope that I have the content to be able to share my slides.
Once you prompt for that, I'll give you permission.
All right. Okay. Yeah?
Yeah.
Can everybody see my slide? Yes, so good. So good morning again. This is actually lessons from my practice, the practice that we've been on for the past 20 years. And a lot of things have changed my mind over time and over the years when it comes to culturally appropriate autism intervention and educational models. And that is because we struggled very, very early when we set up the center in the country. We struggled with systems. We struggled with how would I put it, the high and mighty programs that were dropped at our doorsteps. And we struggled with contents as well as the words that goes on with autism, the big words that we use from time to time. So this morning I just want to open up to ensure that I let kind of my heart out. This slides is just for me to kind of guide me as I go along. I want to speak from the heart. I really do want to speak from the heart. And I would go through with it, but most of the time I would be speaking from my heart. We know that a lot of the interventions that we see today are born out of either systems from the UK, US, or Canada. For example, the behavior modification ABA was designed by the high income countries. And why was it designed by them? For the families to be able to access insurance and to be able to fund the intervention for families, especially in the US. That was how ABA came to rise. And it came to rise because parents were agitating for more services for their children and for the government to come in to support their children, which we don't have in this part of the world. We struggle with the system, even understanding what autism is, not to talk of how they can support and manage the intervention. They are busy, the government is busy struggling with the able, in quotes, children and struggling with getting them into schools rather than even thinking about physical disability, which they can see, and struggling with intellectual disability, which they cannot see, and is always attributed to spiritual attack, attributed to mental challenges, and our children are laden with medications. And when we see them, we are at loss at what to do, and we are in despair just seeing how far the medication has affected the lives of these individuals. So our reality is that we get late diagnosis. The children come in at a very late age when the parents have more or less given up. Some of them do not even want special needs schools. They don't even want interventions because they don't even want people to know. So the stigma comes in at that point in time. And when stigma comes in, the children are hidden in the homes. They are not allowed to go out. They are affected by, they are isolated from their peers, from the community, even from the family. Sometimes they don't let them out of the room. So these are some of the things that we see in reality. And we have few hands. We have very few people that are knowledgeable and know about this um, disorder or difference. And very few people who understand how to manage the challenges that they face on a daily basis. And of course, when they get into the school program, the schools are overcrowded. There are so many people in the classroom. The child is missed. The child is left alone in one corner, trying to figure out how he can make sense of this world that we have it. And then we have to deal with evidence-based versus context and appropriate. So we are looking at what is actually appropriate for this child. What is evidence-based? How can we manipulate evidence-based, to fit the context? So when a child or a family arrives at our center, the first thing we see is late intervention, years and years of delay, where the parents have, more or less given up and they don't know what to do anymore. They just want someone to take it on. We came in around 2006 when there was nothing on ground and very, very few people were in practice at that time for individuals with autism. What most people knew or learned was that they could manage them in mainstream school because they had physical disability, they had mobility problems, they had visual problems, hearing problems. Autism was really very new at that point in time. So parents were coming in at a time when there was absolutely nothing on ground. And when we started, parents began to, and we started to tell a story, and that is the power of storytelling, which we don't do in this part of the world as well, because of the shame culture and the the hiding culture and the judgment from the community. Because of that, many people don't come out to say what is happening. But when we came out and I spoke about my challenges and then um, the way in which we managed my son to a particular level where he was able to, live a full and functional life, many people started to see that, oh, so it is possible for my child to, be in this, to have this and still live a full and functional life. So without storytelling, we would not have been able to get to where we are today. And where we are today is the fact that many people have now come to the realization that autism management is possible and they can take on that management from even from the older age. So I will come and tell more stories about that. And then the spiritual and behavioral explanations that we need to say at every point in time. We all know that the behavior that our children exhibit sometimes mimic mental health challenges. So a lot of people start to look at the child as not being alive, more or less crazy, not being here in our community, and not even living in the setting that we're looking at. So those are the reasons why a lot of us, we know that in Africa in particular, we are very spiritual. Everything has to do with spiritual attack. If the child is coughing, we look at the neighbor. If the child falls down, we see who is around when that child fell. We are very spiritual. So a lot of it had to do with them taking the children to churches or mosques or wherever their beliefs are, and then trying to cast out the demon that that child possessed. So those are some of the things that we saw when we came into the scene. Also, a lot of schools rejected the children mainly because they didn't understand what the child was exhibiting, the hyperactivity, the inattentivity, the odd behavior, the looking from the corner of the eyes, the flapping, the walking on tippy toes. Those are behaviors that many of the schools did not understand how to manage these children. So they would rather say, oh, sorry, we cannot take your child in this school because we don't want him to corrupt the other children in the school. We don't want them to imitate him. We don't want them to, look at him in a funny manner. We don't have the resources. I prefer it when they tell me they don't have the resources. That way we can manage, resources, and we can help train some of their teachers. And then we have the emotional exhaustion from parents. The parents are just tired. They've done everything. They've been here, done that, and they cannot cope anymore. So when they arrive at our center, we find that the parents just say, I just want my child to be okay. I don't want anything else. Some of them just come, drop the child. They are tired. They just want respite. And those are some of the issues that we dealt with when we started the center. Then we looked at our core philosophy, respect. Like I said in my summary, when I was asked to do this presentation, we need to look at the core culture and language. And why do I say that? There was a young man that came to us at 35, and at that age, we were reluctant to take him at the center, even though we are a special school. So, so I'll backtrack a little bit and say a little bit about Patrick's Speech. So Patrick's Speech and Language Center was designed for children and adults with autism. We were the first in Nigeria to set up specifically for individuals living with autism. And we were designed as a special school. At that time, special schools were not appreciated or even tolerated. Many people didn't want their children in special schools. They wanted them in mainstream schools because they felt that putting children together in a special needs unit means that the child will copy the other child's behavior. And I always often wonder why parents are always worried about, oh, my child is going to copy this behavior that this child is doing. If your child is copying, in my own opinion, I used to tell them that if your child can copy, that means your child can learn. So I didn't see the the rhetoric about a child copying another child. So when we set up as a special needs unit with different areas of specialization. We took on speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, behavior modification. We were very, very big. We are very, very big in music and movement, and we were very big in vocation as well. So when the 35-year-old man came to our doorstep, that was the oldest we had ever seen. We couldn't reach him. We tried everything. We tried to get him to speak to us. Of course, he came in non-verbal, high and very, very challenging behavior, lack of understanding of his environment, not being aware of himself. And then so we said to ourselves, to the mom, can you try our summer program? Let's just see if there is something that we would be able to do to support him. And so the mother was very happy because for the first time, she found somebody who was willing to take her hand to support her son. So when they came into the center, we started off with him. We realized two things. We realized the first thing is that even though he was very hyperactive and was not very aware of his environment, he understood his person. And when I say that, what do I mean? Most of the teachers at that time were younger than him. When they call him by his name, he would not respond. But when they say Uncle Sheon, when they add an uncle or a connotation of somebody elderly to his name, they found out that he will stop in his tracks and he would, give a recognition. Sometimes he would not smile, but he would stop and take a look, give eye contact, which ordinarily he would not give, telling you that he understood his person. Then we started to work with him in different areas and we started to support him and talk to him about therapy. We took him through the different areas of therapy. When we were eventually able to reach him, we noticed that every time he would come into the school, he would walk into my office and go straight to my fridge. And he would stand by the fridge and I would ask him, what do you want? He wouldn't answer. And then one day I decided to use the local language to ask him what he wanted. And he responded verbatim. Wow. Telling me that language matters, culture matters. That's an example of how we can reduce our didactic method of teaching and improve it in the area of either understanding the individual or using a play-based or natural system method to work with that individual. We used everyday materials. We used everything that he understood. He loved Coca-Cola. We would use the bottle of Coke to teach everything. If you do this, we would give this. We would give you the Coke if you do this. Using things that he was familiar with helped rather than the things that we borrowed from or we had in the classroom that we used that we brought in either from the international systems. Then we found that training parents as co-therapists went a long way. Importantly, the children do not have enough time, either in the school or in the therapy center, for us to teach everything that they would need. And we know that the children learn best in the least restrictive environment, in the natural environment, in their naturalistic environment. So we started to train parents and encourage them to come and understand what we do at the center. We asked them that we reduced the jargons that came with them, working with them. We reduced the jargon and increased, the words, the natural words that were used in the home environment. And if they understood language, the language, either the Yoruba, Igbo, or Hausa, we found out that that was easy for them to understand. Then we had blended fees. I know the person that came before me has already spoken about that. In this part of the world, we found that there are a lot of people that could pay for services. Parents are beladen with the fact that they are the ones that pay for services. They understand the system that we live in, which is the Nigerian system, where the government is not involved in supporting individuals with special needs. The parents have to pay out of pocket, and many of them could not afford the fees. This 35-year-old that came to our doorstep, the mother was a single mother who her marriage had collapsed because of the challenges of her son, and then they had blended fees. So in terms of managing the fees of the children, we've had to engage in free services for the families. So we started off with every time we have 3 children, one person must be free. And then we started to look at different areas in which we can support our scholarship scheme. We've been very, very big in scholarship, and we've done a lot for families outside of the school. And our focus also is on life skills. We don't believe that the children cannot do anything at all. What we find is that parents are overcompensating for a lot of the things that our children, especially our teenagers and our young adults, can do. They are overcompensating because they believe that, oh, there is no, because the child is challenged in this area, we must, follow the lead of that child of how that. No, we believe strongly in the fact that, and I think it's actually an African thing. An African mother believes that the children can fly. You know how we are when it comes to my child has to be a doctor, a, a pilot, an engineer. We believe our children can fly. So we've come to our natural environment. And then if you look at at maybe I'm a little bit older. When I was very, very young and I used to go to the village to see my grandmother, there were a lot of things that they would put us through as young children, making sure that they understood first our personality. My grandmother understood each person's personality. She knew that if I would do this with Dotun, she would go this milestone. If I do this with her younger sister, she would go this milestone. That's focus on life skills and what the child can do independent of the parents is one of the core philosophies of how we operate at Patrick's. We believe that there is nothing impossible with this, our children. We have one of our young adults that has been with us a long time. We've taught him everything, shoemaking, sewing. We've taught him every educational aspect of it. He did not grasp any one of it until we introduced him to cleaning of the center. We encouraged him to clean, first of all, his own environment, then the classroom, then the school. Then at the end of the school, he would take out all the trash we have in the school. He knew what to do. He followed the routine on a daily basis, and now he has a job doing that. So we are very focused on life skills and what the individuals can do independent of their challenges. And we believe that every child can learn. So our practical intervention model, we do have our therapies. So we have the speech and language therapy that we normally work with the children. And because speech and language therapy needs specialization, and we do not have that many speech and language therapists in Nigeria. So I can tell you, since 2006, when we came to the scene, in fact, since 2000, when I came into the scene of autism, I cannot find 10 full speech and language therapists on ground at the same time. The minute they get through, they get their certificate, there's brain drain. They are out of the country. Occupational therapy, over the years, there was a lady that found out that there is a need, a large need for occupational therapists, and decided to set up an occupational therapy school in Nigeria. That helped open the doors for more occupational therapists to come in and help in the area of special needs. But even with that, very little, very minimal part of autism is being spoken at the occupational therapy school. So they've had to come out and learn more from organizations such as ours. I remember the first occupational therapist we got at Patrick's. He said he knew nothing about autism. All they did tell him in the occupational therapy school was for the was for him to work with those working with the physiotherapists and the elderly that were struggling with life skills due to stroke and old age and managing, them in that regards. And then we have the play-based learning. The play-based learning is really one of the very best ways in which the model we've used to support our children in the different areas of therapy needs, in behavior modification, in music and movement, in attention building, in sensory integration. The play-based method has shown to be one of the ways in which we can teach skills. And you remember, in our classical cultural model, we have a lot of games that has to do with hand-to-eye coordination, that has to do with understanding movement, music and movement, that had to do with a lot of clapping, a lot of jumping, a lot of hiding, a lot of problem solving. So those are the methods we have used to support the children. And then we look at our environment. Our environment must be simple and engaging. And then the use of local toys that that is designed, to support those individuals. And then family and home programs. I've spoken a lot about that in terms of training and supporting these individuals in their home and in the places where they understand, where they are most comfortable, where they are accepted, where the environment speaks to them. So now I want to speak a little bit about parents' education is intervention. They are intervention. I put the is in capital because I want to state the fact that the educating the parents is very important in intervention. Parents must learn autism and understand it to a place where they would be able to dissect it to the minimal level. They will be able to make it seem as if it's something that they are out of this world, that they understand fully. They must be able to understand their child. They must be able to put the challenges the child faces into a plan. They must be able to draw up what we call, they don't need to do an IEP really, but they need to have a notebook where there's what we call the observation notes that supports the beginning of therapy. You must know the child. Without knowing that child and understanding that child, you have already first of all set up yourself to fail. You cannot use the in quote unquote typical therapy for all children. Some children don't need behavior modification. Some children don't need speech and language therapy. Some children don't need attention activities. Some are not hyperactive, they are hypo. So you have to learn, first of all, observe that child, know the learning style of that child, understand what makes that child ticks, understand what ticks that child off before you start set up to be able to support that individual. And communication is key. Many times they say because the child is not speaking, that's that way, therefore they cannot speak to teach that child any skill. We find that when they bring the children to us at 4 and they are in diapers and we say, oh, why didn't you do potty training? He said he can't speak. He can't tell us he wants to go to, but you can show him where the toilet is and he can go. So you can build his receptive language while you wait for the expressive language to develop. So communication is, they have to learn how to communicate with the children effectively. They have to understand how that child relates in terms of communication. And then they must also be able to regulate not only the child's behavior, but their behavior. They must not tick off their frustrations on that child. And we find that African parents are very impatient, and we definitely have a need to, sometimes sit back and allow the child to be able to be expressive. We are most of the time focused on getting that child to do what we want, for the child to compliance. We insist a lot on compliance rather than leading the child, to support the intervention. So culturally speaking, it's not everything that we have in our culture that is good or understands, that gives understanding to what the child is struggling with. And then the daily skills, of course, we have to teach it, we have to understand it, we have to make sure that it works effectively. We have to make them do some chores that you have to make them do some chores that they should be able to do in their daily life. We must encourage them to be self-sustaining, self-reliant. And then, of course, the parents must also advocate for their children, advocate for services. Individuals in our culture it does not encourage, us, challenging our government, but we need to rise up and challenge the government, challenge the systems. Those are things that we feel that the parents can add to intervention. The results of all that I've spoken about here is confident families and faster progress. The families become more confident, especially when the children are doing well in their various areas of services, and the progress now becomes, kind of faster than the okay, sorry. Okay, now inclusive education. I know there's a lot of talk about how we need to be inclusive. The children must be able to stay in the mainstream school, must be able to manage their resources, must be able to, sit with their peers, must learn alongside their age group, must learn. But we need to rethink what we mean by inclusive education. When we say rethink what we mean by inclusive education, we need to know what is happening in those areas when we are calling inclusive. We cannot be inclusive when placement is not inclusion. So I wrote it here that placement alone is not inclusion. Placement alone is not inclusion. The fact that we place them in the community does not mean that we have included them. If we don't prepare the environment that they are going into, and following the systems where we say in the developed world, where they have trained the teachers, they have continued with advocacy for years. They've been advocating for this, and they've been talking about it. Even in the developed countries where they have been talking about this for years and years and years on, there are some parents are still struggling. First of all, with services, then with the community even understanding the challenges that their children face on a daily basis. So we say placement alone is not inclusion. Placement alone is not inclusion. At Patrick's, how do we make sure that this happens? So when you come in and we start to see progress, and our center is not a center where you are supposed to stay in for the rest of your life. We find ways in which we can make you inclusive in your environment. So the first thing we do is to put you in a class for beginners. Once we have that in place, depending on your age and your ability, once we have that in place and we start therapy and we begin to see progress, then we now divert a little bit, go into the transition class. In that transition class, we start to prepare the individual for two areas. First, in the vocational area. Secondly, in the academics. If we find that the child is doing well with academics and has gained enough skills, we slowly integrate. We send them to school 2 days a week and for a term. And once we see that that has progressed, we increase the number of days until we eventually, face them, let them go into the school system. And then if it's the vocational system, we let them go into the community. So we start with them in the beginners class. We branch them out into the main school system or the vocational system. We prepare them and then we let them go into the community. Also, teacher training. We are very, very, very big on teacher training. And that is because many people know what they've read on Google, what they've seen on TV, what they've read in the papers, the trainings they've attended abroad, and they cannot bring the practice down to our level. So we use our Nigerian systems and our Nigerian experiences to train the teachers. We modify the goals, we modify the system, we track what that individual has been able to do, we engage the parents and the people that work with the child, and then we flow into inclusion, either by sending the child to where the child would do well in. For example, we have a young girl, a young lady who came to us at the age of 7 and struggled with academics. But we found out that whatever practical things you teach her, she's able to, grasp easily. Eventually, she settled in for the sewing. When we saw that she's doing well with sewing, we sent her to one of the big sewing institutes for her to intern there, and then understand the system of the system and the structure. And we also were able to teach the tailors in that institute how to cope with her, how to manage her, how to work with her, and how to encourage her also to blend into their system. They too understood how important it was for somebody who is different in their community to be able to blend into their own community. So it's a win-win. It's a symbiotic win-win relationship where the teacher is learning, the student is also learning. And then we, of course, modify goals, to suit whatever plan we have for each child. And then we have the participation focus. That is where we focus on what that individual can do and participate in without prompts, without help. Okay, so we also look at our population size as an advantage because we are a country of over 200 million people. That means that we have an advantage. How do we use that our cultural advantage, our large size as an advantage to our own culture? It means that we can have large parent cohorts. We can bring parents together. And how do we do that? For us at Patrick's, because we are a center that many people know have a strong scholarship scheme where we support parents and families, we often get a lot of people come to our doorstep to say, oh, Mrs. Akande, I cannot afford services and I need this service for my children or for my child. And I would love, to come on. And there is no way we can take everybody at the center. The center is not large enough to take, even if it's large enough, we can't afford it. So we decided to, to start what we call the community outreach. In that community outreach, we go to the different areas, the locations where we know parents struggle with their children or the low income areas. And then we set up for 3 days. We see the parents on a one-to-one basis. We encourage them we first of all go to the area, we do an advocacy, we do a call, we send out flyers that we're coming on this particular day. And on that day, when we get there, we set up, we have the different units, we have the registration units, the registration units will tell us who is here and where does that individual need to go. So we have the speech and language unit set up, OT set up, um, um, community advocacy setup. We have the psychologist on ground, to help with, and then the counseling session for the parents. And we allow them to go through the different areas. And when we finish that program, after the third day, we pair them with the primary healthcare center that is around their area so that if they have any need, they can always go there for anything that has to do with medicals. We also have doctors on ground that would help, with if they needed anything that had to do with maybe it's nothing to do with therapy, but something to do with medicals. They would also be able to guide them. So we pair them with the primary healthcare center. And after the 3 days, we put everybody in a WhatsApp group. In that WhatsApp group, we have somebody that comes in on a daily basis to talk about different areas of need: nutrition, OT, speech, academics, inclusion, every area that you can think of. We have somebody that will come in. And what that has done is that it built a large cohort of parents. So the parents have now come together. We've been doing that since 2019, and they have now built a community on their own where they can share ideas. So when the question comes into that digital platform, we are all we put everybody in a WhatsApp group. So on that platform, when questions come in, the parents also can come in, to share ideas, share understand what they have also been through, and then also create opportunities for referrals. So these large parent cohorts has helped build a community of parents that understand the needs of their children and can work in the different areas that their child would, succeed in. Then we have group therapy uh, in the in in our center, at our center, or in the different areas. Why is group therapy important? Peer-to-peer mentoring goes a long way, and we move away from the didactic method of learning and more into the play-based, understanding that the regular way of teaching will not work for our children. We need to find ways in which we can make it functional. We look at the functional uh, communication. We look at the function of the behavior that they are exhibiting, and how can we mitigate those functions? How can we, create ways in which we can support them in their area of challenge? And then rapid peer learning. Remember, I said that they complain about copying. Copying is actually a good way, a good thing that you can use in the therapy area to support learning for our children. And that is because we learn a lot, especially the girl child, by copying and understanding the needs of those children. So peer learning and peer mentoring and peer tutoring, we find it very, very, very instrumental to the progress of the children, and it's very functional, and it makes it, very interesting to see what happens when we put someone that knows and somebody that is learning, we pair them together. We usually get very good results. And lastly, it has helped to build local paraprofessionals. There has been many complaints that in the field where we are, there are many quacks in the field. Many people have come up with different groups. So when we started at a center, but there are many groups out there that have home-based teachers that goes into the homes and the schools to support the children, either as a shadow teacher or as a tutor. So we found that many of them, when we do our training, we started with training parents as well as training teachers. And then once they get the certificates, that 1 day certificate, they run with it, and then they begin to say that they already have skills in dealing with children with autism. When we saw that that was a challenge, we raised a team. In that team, we have a speech and language therapist, an occupational therapist, a behaviorist. I handle self-regulation, and then we have nutrition and community health. We came together to set up a training institute. In that training institute, we've been able to train local para professionals, because why do we have so many of them coming for that training? One, the incidence of autism is growing, and even disability is growing. The job market is saturated, so you find somebody that has studied economics coming into this profession. Yes, some of them want to make money off it. So if they want to make money off it, they have to be good at it. That is our philosophy. If you know it's an area you want to go in, come and learn how to manage these children. So we have a 3 months program where we train the paraprofessionals, and then we put them on a 40, I think 80 hours internship, where they would come in and learn the practical side of it before going into the community. Now, what we realize now is that we have so many of them coming in for the training and going into the field, and we are now looking at a way how we can build regulation around, those professionals out there. So you see that it's a pillar, it builds itself. So culturally, we are getting to a stage where we understand our own system, we understand our own culture, we are building our own environment, we are advocating for different services, for improved services, and we are supporting those that are in the field to reduce the number of quacks that go into the homes and go into the school. Not saying that there would be quacks out there, but I mean, we are mitigating the fact because parents are becoming wiser. And like I always say, the center cannot do it alone. We are waking up the senses of the parents, waking up the senses of the government, waking up the senses of the community to say, okay, now these people are out there. Who is going to regulate these services? So that is the next step at which we are putting our boots on ground to make sure that we get that done. We've realized it. We've seen that that is something that has come up culturally. We are also looking to build our own system, just as well as they in the West have been able to build their system. We are not there yet, but we are moving on and we are trying to catch up with what happens in the developed world. So, so I put it here that scale enables faster skill diffusion. Once we begin to scale up and move up, it enables us to diffuse skills faster and better. Okay, sorry, my system hangs from time to time. So how do we replicate this framework to suit our cultural systems? One, we've talked about it. We train the parents, we train the teachers. We use our community spaces. When we talk about using our community spaces, there's a project that we just finalized and we put out there for funding. It's using the community spaces. How do we do that? We go to the primary healthcare centers. Like I said, when we go into the communities, we do therapy sessions, 3 days, we bring them into the system. But now we want to use the community spaces by using uh, short drama presentations for the areas. You do a short drama, use that to bring people out from the community, and then use that space to train the little cluster of families that are around that area. Look for somebody that can head that unit, that can continue to go into their homes to support them and find ways in which they can continue to help them make their children better, encourage them. If possible, if we find work for them around that area, once we've been able to train the child enough in that community, we can infuse some of the skills and talents that that individual has into some of the work programs that exist in that community, helping that individual to be included into that area of community. So we are partnering with churches. I go to churches and I speak about inclusion, how they can allow the adults to come into their space, to be greeters at the door, to come into their space and be part of the music group, because we know that a lot of our children love music. They engage in music like no, like it's their natural world. So why don't we teach them how to play an instrument and then use that to introduce them into uh, the the church or the NGOs around, find ways in which we can infuse some of those their gifts and talents in those areas, and then blend, like I said, paid and sponsored therapy together. So once we find those that can pay, then we find those that can sponsor those that cannot pay and bring them together, and then tracking outcomes. Something we have not done very well is data gathering. We have not been very good at gathering data. I would say mostly the doctors are concentrated on those that they see in the hospital and not those that are in the community. So one thing that we have not been able to do effectively is track outcomes and put outcomes into series. We've done that in our own little way, in our little area as Patrick's, but we need to go out into the wider community to bring that into full. Autism support begins with understanding. Without understanding, without observation, without learning from that individual, we have failed. No matter how much of an expert you are, if you do not understand the individual, if you do not understand the child, if you do not understand the environment, you have failed. Then it goes along with training. Training is very important because that's how you learn how to manage the child, how to develop a plan, how to do a schedule, how to use the picture exchange communication if the child is nonverbal, how to encourage uh, alternative means of communication, sometimes sign language, if the child is attuned to that, and writing, which is sometimes one of some of the children like to do. They like to write rather than speak. Some of them like to type rather than speak. So you need to find what works for that individual in your community. And in our local community, because we are still developing, many people do not have the use of the technology to be able to manage these children in the different fields. So technology in communication, technology in occupational therapy, but those can be broken down to what is available in the community. You don't have to have the technology for you to be able to train, your child. And we can give you low low technology that can be used, to support these children. And you can look at what happens in your own environment and use that as a means to support the child. The community and the environment in which the child is growing is very important and must be also encouraged. Compassion and empathy must also be encouraged. So I say here, when science meets culture, our children thrive. When science meets culture, our children thrive. Thank you very much for listening to me today.
Thank you so much for being on the program. It's been an amazing time having you here. But before we let you go, there are some questions in the chat. If you would stop sharing your screen so that we
Yeah.
can bring that on.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. So first question we have is from Chinedu. So Chinedu says, what happens when intervention models ignore culture and language? I believe you've answered that question, but you can help clarify, Chinedu, more.
All right. Like I said, intervention is not cast in stone. You can build your own intervention strategies. We've had to build our own over time at the center, and that has helped us, to reach the children more. I mean, if you listen to what I said about the young man that came to us, and we were trying to teach him in English, and he was not learning, and we switched to the local language, and the child it was amazing what he has been able to achieve in terms of communication in the local language. So that's why it's important for you to know the individual, know the child. You have to be able to understand that child, to be able to reach that child in their cultural, ask questions, ask the parents, ask the family, go deeper, ask deep questions that the family will be able to provide that you, as the person intervening, might not know or understand. And teach the family also the importance of using the language and the system. One of the things we taught the mother of that young man was that whenever he had lunch, he would take his plate and drop it in the sink. And because he liked food so much, when it was time for dinner, he would go and stand by the stove, and the mother would have to wash the plate to, serve him dinner. So we said, no, can you please let the plate sit in the sink, and encourage him that when he wants dinner, you have to wash your plates to be able to get dinner. So like, you kind of,
Mhm.
using the district trial training, to get that child to be able to, do what you want him to do. Yeah.
In the same vein, Miriam is asking, sometimes when we try to kind of adapt our programs, um, people think that it might begin to lose, we begin to water it down so much that it will begin to lose context. So she's asking, how can programs adapt to context without losing effectiveness?
You build effectiveness. I mean, I don't believe that you can lose it totally, because what you need to do is do your task analysis. I mean, find out where you start from in that program, and then you begin to. The problem is we are focused on compliance so much that we stay too long on prompts rather than use they allow the therapy itself to dictate the level at which we are going. So you don't have to keep in context. All you need to do is do a task analysis of whatever you're about to do and start from where that child is at the lowest, and then you build it up, and you don't have to get to a place of full capacity before you go to the next level. You build it up, and then you begin to pick the brain of that child. Allow that child to use his ability to problem solve to move on onto that ladder. You can build your ladder. It's not cast in stone. Our grandmothers did not, have systems in place when they used to teach us how to manage, when they used to manage our behavior when we were growing up.
That's right. It's not all about ticking the boxes. It's
Yes.
about the impact.
Yeah.
Okay, and then lastly from Yusuf, it says, what indicators show that an intervention truly fits a family's reality? What interventions or what indicators show that an intervention truly fits a family's reality?
Progress. Progress is your indicator. Progress on all sides, progress in the parents acknowledging the challenges of that child and willingness for them to follow you through that pattern. That's the first thing. Training the parents to understand how sequencing matters to that child in his everyday life and allowing that child to be a person. And when you see that there is a lot of happiness and joy coming into that environment, that child usually thrives. So the progress in acknowledging, the progress in accepting therapy, the progress in educating that child to the full potential of that child. Remember, full potential doesn't mean the child has to be a medical doctor or an engineer. Full potential is what that child can do independently without the help of anyone. It could be that the child loves music and plays drums. If drums is what that child wants to do, then we'll make sure that the child is the best drummer in the community. So that's what tells you that intervention is taking place. And
Wow.
progress, you can define your progress. And at every stage of attainment, you move to the next level. It's like a ladder.
How you can define your progress. Thank you so much for joining us. Most of the things you pointed out here is that parents' education is a major intervention, is a major part of the intervention. In fact, the parents' education is intervention. I took that down. The result of parents' education is, it gives confidence to families. It
Yeah.
leads to confident families and faster progress. And another thing you said is that it's important, it's imperative you understand the child.
Yeah.
Because if you don't understand the child, it will be difficult to relate or reflect when you're narrating to reflect the child's true situation and the kind of help that the child needs. You also said that we should focus on that your center focuses on the life skills of the children. Would you mind closing up on that?
Okay, yeah. So thank you very much for having me today. It was a real pleasure to, share some of the things that we've been able to do over time. Life skills is one thing that we find that parents, especially parents that can afford services, rarely encourage with their children because they tend to want to do everything for the child. 13-year-old was brought to us, and because we were not allowing the child to take on some of the things that he brought into the center with him into the classroom. The parents felt we were not, nice enough, to
Inclusive
support.
enough.
We were not willing to, she actually said that we did not respect the wishes of her child, which we feel that sometimes a lot of enablement has to be dropped at the door and allow the problem solving part of that child's brain to come on. One thing I didn't speak on was that if we do not encourage the growing and the growth of brain development in our children, we found out, research found out that many of them, when they attain the age of between 12 and 13, they begin to have epileptic fit because they are not using the part of the brain that has to do with functional life skills. And that
Yeah.
is why we promote it at the center. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you so much for being on the program. It's been an amazing having you here. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
you have a wonderful day.